get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Tim Westbrook of Camelback Recovery, and I'm going to formally introduce Tim in a second. And Tim, I always like to mention other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And because, Camelback Recovery is a mental health clinic, addiction treatment, sober living in Arizona. Tim also has outpatient treatment centers as well. But, I had Tony Grebmeyer on who runs Ship Offers, and he openly talks about his struggle with addiction and how he kind of turned his life around. So people should check out that episode. And Tim, I don't know if you know Tony or if you've had him on your podcast, but you should, and I'm happy to introduce you guys. Also, Dan Cashel.
I'd love that.
Do you know Tony?
I don't,
okay.
But yeah, I'd love to introduce him.
Great. Dan Cashel is a good friend, and I bring that up because Tim and I were introduced by Alex Mendozian, and I know you know Alex through Genius Network and Joe Polish, and Dan did work with Genius Network for a number of years. So check out the episode I did with Dan Cashel. And before I introduce Tim, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. How do we do that? We help you run your podcast. For me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. I found no better way to do that than to profile the people and companies I most admire on this planet and have them on my podcast. Shout from the rooftops what they're working on so people can discover them and what they're doing. And so if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, you can go to rise25.com and ask us anything you want. We're happy. We've been doing it for over a decade. And so just let us know. And we'll talk about Tim's podcast as well. Tim Westbrook is the founder and CEO of Camelback Recovery. It's in Phoenix, Arizona. Before getting clean and sober, and their struggles with substance addiction that affected his everyday life. And by March of 2011, Tim hit his bottom and became willing to go to any lengths to get and to stay sober. And really through his journey out of addiction and into recovery, he's experienced and helped others experience the strength and hope of lifelong sobriety. And his passion for health and fitness and changing people's lives allowed him and inspired him to open up Camelback Recovery. And really accounts for his passion and determination to make sure they have the highest success rate they can with people. So you can check everything out at camelbackrecovery.com. And Tim, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And hopefully I can share something that helps somebody else today.
Take us back to 2011.
Ooh, okay. So 2011, I can kind of give a quick version of my story. And I think that might be helpful to give people some insight. So, April 19th, 1996, I'm a sophomore at UC Davis. It's picnic day, the biggest party of the year, 200,000 people. The day starts at 8 a.m. with Bloody Marys, moves on to beer pong, keg stands, and singing Piano Man, arm in arm with my fraternity brothers. About 2 a.m., I'm like, see you later. I'm going to the Nard. I get in my car to drive to Oxnard. About 2 hours later, I fall asleep at the wheel. The guy behind me watches me veer to the left, flip over 3 times, and end up on the other side of the freeway. He finds me curled up in a little ball in what used to be the driver's seat of my Toyota pickup, amazed that I'm still alive. I spent 4 days in ICU, 28 days in 24-hour care, 6 weeks in a transitional living home for brain injured adults, 6 weeks in disability classes at Ventura College. I don't remember 2 weeks of my life. Nurses ask me to name animals. I say dog, cat, mouse, mouseketeer. Dr. Judy said to my family, he'll never fully recover from this traumatic brain injury. He'll never go back to UC Davis. But I fought hard. People used to say, God has a plan for you, Tim. That's why you survived. But at the time, I believed that I survived because of the house painting business I ran over the summer, doing my own sales and marketing and advertising and hiring and firing employees. That's how I got my brain to recover. I was the GM of a painting company when I overdosed on GHB at a company event. I get fired. The next GHB overdose, I'm out partying with friends. They put me in a cab. I wake up in jail. The next overdose, I'm out partying with my cousin Brian the night before Easter. My stepsister kicks me out of her house. Nothing stops me. I was offered the VP position of another painting company, and I'm running the largest startup division ever. And by my third year, I'm the number 2 division in the country. Work hard, play hard. That's my motto. Our company retreats are in Vegas, Cancun, Miami, Park City. And every single time, I'm the most fucked up person there. Every single time, they pull me aside. They say, Tim, we need to talk about your drinking. Then I meet Jennifer, an attractive brunette and owner of a successful business in San Francisco. She makes up this song about me. It's Monday, and it's all about Tim. It's Tuesday, it's all about Tim. And everyone would laugh their asses off because it was true. Selfish, self-centered Tim. It's all about Tim. Soon, I'm fired again. Fuck them. Yeah, I work hard, but I drink hard, and I do drugs, but I get results. So I take off with Jen first class to Europe. We stay in 5-star hotels for 3 months, propose with a huge diamond ring, get married at a fancy resort, buy 5 homes in Arizona. I'm going to make millions in real estate. This is like 2006, 2007, 2008, right? 3 years later, I kiss Jennifer goodbye on a Friday. I pick up my friend Sepp, who's in town from San Francisco. And after a weekend of shenanigans, I return home on Sunday. And that's when Jen looks at me and said, I'm done. I'm leaving you. And the only way I will consider taking you back is if you never drink again, go to rehab, stop playing golf. Two days later, I go to my first AA meeting ever. I remember pulling into the parking lot and seeing a bunch of guys just laughing and having a great time. And I'm in my car crying, going, why the fuck are these guys so happy? My life is over. I go into that meeting, and that's the first time I say, my name's Tim, I'm an alcoholic. They give me a big book. They tell me to keep coming back. Today, and that was March 8th, 2011. Today, I continue to work a 12-step program. I've learned that fulfillment comes from helping other people. I'm passionate about my recovery and helping other people. I'm so grateful for the life I have today. So that was what happened.
Tim, that's crazy. And for people listening, it's always a journey, right? So it's not like it stopped then. Talk about the constant journey of staying on track.
So for me, working a 12-step program, the 12-step program, that's my foundation. And, a lot of people talk about, doing the work, right? And so for me, doing the work started with the 12-step program, and doing the work of the 12-step program doesn't mean just going to meetings. Because I've heard people say that I've gone to meetings. It's like, did you work the steps? Did you get a sponsor? Did you do the deal? And they're like, no, it doesn't work. You can't say it doesn't work if you don't actually do it. And doing it Working a 12-step program means you take, number one, you take suggestions. I had to realize that my best thinking got me where I was. And if I wanted something different, if I wanted my life to look different, I had to take suggestions from other people. So I found a sponsor that had what I wanted, and I did what he told me to do. I went to meetings 1 or 2 times a day. I did a gratitude list every single day. I called 3 people in the program every single day. I worked my 12 steps. I got a service commitment. I got lots of service commitments, and I continued to be of service. My first couple years, I was going to 1 or 2 meetings a day, and my whole life was surrounded around recovery. And that was around the 12. And what I mean is the 12-step program, hanging out with people before the meeting, and then hanging out with people after the meeting, playing golf with people that were in the 12-step program, going to 12-step related events. That was what I needed. So that was my foundation. But then after that, I continued because here's the deal. Like, my drinking and using, my behavior, my alcoholic behavior, which is the selfish, self-centered, lying, cheating, and stealing. And I'm not talking about robbing a bank, lying, cheating, and stealing. I'm talking about just being dishonest, being a dishonest person, and doing things that I'm not proud of, doing things that I don't feel good about, doing things that are not aligned with my values. The reason why people feel restless, irritable, and discontent is because their behavior is not aligned with their values. And so, because I feel the guilt and the shame, I don't feel good. I want the solution. The solution is the drink or the drug. Everybody has a solution, and my solution was destructive. And there are a lot of people that have a solution that has negative consequences. So the definition of addiction is to continue with a behavior or an action despite negative consequences. And so that was, and so for me, the 12-step program, as I said, that's where it started. But then there's lots of other things. I started doing yoga, which yoga, mind, body, spirit, the principles of yoga are aligned with the principles of AA. And so there's yoga. Then I started doing CrossFit, and there's that community, the community, like health and fitness is kind of that's my thing. That's my jam. And so I've done Ironman a couple of times. That was amazing. As I told you earlier, I'm training for rim to rim to rim, which is 50 miles and 10,000 feet of climbing, which is that's kind of, I guess you can call it kind of like my passion project. It's not a passion project, but it's kind of like a passion project. Like, that's what I'm focused on. And guess what? I'm focused on that. And therefore, all of the things that I do are going to support that activity. And I realized being clean and sober meant that all of my decisions had to support that decision. It's like there are no decisions because my decision is to be clean and sober. Therefore, all of my decisions support that decision. And so it's have you heard this story? If it makes the boat go faster, does it make the boat go faster? Mm-mm. Okay, I'm not going to. I don't even know how to tell that story, but basically, there was like a crew team, and they wanted to win the national championship or whatever it was that they wanted to win. And the question, whether it's like, hey, should we go to this party tonight? Will it make the boat go faster? Should I drink a 12-pack of beer? Will it make the boat go faster? No. Therefore, the decision is no. Should I go? Whatever the decision is, does it make the boat go faster? And so that's the only question I need to ask is, does this support my recovery? Does this support my health? Does this support my well-being? Because today it's not just like, oh, I need to stay sober. And I think it's okay for people at the very beginning. I just got to stay sober. I need to make it to 24 hours. I need to make it to 30 days. I need to make it to 60 days. I just got to stay sober. I just got to stay sober. That's not long-term. That doesn't work long-term. Long-term, it has to be focused on living my best life, doing things that I love, doing things that bring fulfillment. And I was talking, I don't remember who, I was talking with somebody else about this, about exercise, because I'm very fit. And he asked me, man, how do you stay so fit? And it's just, I think about people that are they do the yo-yo diets, or they do they have these goals to go to the gym every single day and get super fit. And then that's not long-term. Long-term is like the lifestyle, and what do I want? Why am I doing the things that I'm doing? I work out and I stay fit. It's not like, oh, I got to go to the gym today. I mean, sometimes if I'm like training for rim to rim to rim, I've got a big hike this Sunday, and like, I'm going to do it. There's not really like, that supports my goal. If I don't take the necessary steps to prepare myself for this big hike, it's going to be miserable. Like, it's the same thing as doing Ironman. Like, I had a coach, because I need a coach. I need somebody else to tell me what to do. And especially before I did Ironman for the first time, like, it was like, that's no joke. It's a
each
long
one
day.
of those, each one of the portions of Ironman is no joke. You know, if people don't know an Ironman, it's like a marathon, and then the swim, and then the bike, you know.
Well, the marathon's at the end. So
right, exactly.
It's a 2.4 mile swim and then a 112 mile bike. I'll tell you what, after 112 miles on the bike, I don't care who you are. I mean, I just want to throw the bike. Like, I'm excited to go run a marathon. Okay. like I can't wait to start running this marathon after being on the bike for 112 miles. And then you got to run a marathon at the end. So it's pretty gnarly. And yeah, it's just preparing for it. It's not whether or not I'm going to make it. It's just, okay, like, am I going to be a little faster or a little slower? I already know I'm going to be able to do it because I put in the time and the effort and I trained for it.
Yeah, that's incredible. You really focused your energy on these goals. And one of them, at what point did you decide, I'm going to start Camelback Recovery?
So a lot of things happened to me. So once I got sober, and this is the other thing too, just because someone gets sober, a lot of times they're like, I'm sober now, my life should be great. It's like, man, you created wreckage for like 20 years or 25 years or however long it was. So for me, okay, I got clean and sober. I started feeling better. I started thinking more clearly. I started sleeping better. I started to get fit, but I still had a lot that I had to go through. Separation, divorce, bankruptcy. My real estate license was revoked. I lost my business. I lost, I bought a bunch of homes in Arizona, as I said in my story. I short sold, so I lost all my homes. I lost all but one of them. So like, there's a lot of shit that happened. And the reason why I started Camelback Recovery, there was a woman. So when I owned this real estate company, they were vacation rentals. And I rented out this vacation rental to a woman named Mina and a woman named Mina and Kristen. And I found out that they turned my home into a sober living home. And I was like, really? And so I didn't know. First off, I found out they were in recovery. And I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. Like, I'm in recovery too. Yay. And when you're newly sober and you find out somebody else is newly sober, it's like, oh wow, yay. And there are a lot of people in recovery. I mean, it's like, once you get sober, you realize just how many people are in recovery. So find out these two women are in recovery. Wow, okay, great. And then I find out they turned my home into a sober living home for women. I was like, really? Oh, huh, okay. And that was about the same time when my real estate license got revoked, and I had to figure out what I was going to do next with my life. And so it's like, okay, I'm passionate about my recovery. I'm passionate about helping other people. I need to figure out what I'm going to do next with my life. And I actually had another home that I needed to figure out I needed to figure out something to do with it, because I'm no longer doing vacation rentals. And so I decided to go back to school to get my master's in addiction counseling. I started up Camelback Recovery. We were just sober living. And so that's kind of how it got started. That was 2014.
Tim, talk about the continuum of care. And then we could talk about how Camelback Recovery fits into that, because I think when we were talking before we hit record, at least I wasn't familiar of all the different pieces of the continuum of care and where you fit into that.
Yes, of course. So the continuum of care is, so it's like typically when someone needs the most help, they need to go to detox, right? They need to be detox. They need to be medically detox. So detox is like the highest level of care. And then below that, you've got inpatient treatment. And then you have partial hospitalization. And then you have intensive outpatient treatment. And then you have sober living. And then you also have mixed in, you have case management, you have recovery coaching, so those are kind of the different levels of care. And so when we started in 2014, we provided sober living. And in my experience, and sober living is just as important, if not more important than treatment, because this is the thing, when someone goes to treatment, they're in a bubble. They're protected. Like they don't even have to make decisions, really. Like they get out of bed at the same time. Breakfast is taken care of for them. They have group, then they have lunch, then they have another individual therapy session, and then they have dinner, and then they have yoga, and then they have a 12-step meeting. You know what I mean? Like, so, and they don't have their cell phone. They don't work. They're not around all of the toxic relationships that they were around before going into treatment. So it's pretty easy to stay clean and sober when someone's in treatment, when someone's in that bubble. The real growth happens when a person leaves inpatient treatment or partial hospitalization. And so that's where sober living comes into play. And someone could be in sober living and also attending an outpatient treatment program. So they're in therapy for, like 15 hours a week, 12 to 15 hours a week, but then they're also living at a sober living. They could also do intensive outpatient treatment and live at home. It's really, again, someone drinks or uses for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, like that's how they're programmed to live life, right? And 95% of our thinking is subconscious, only 5% of it is conscious. So the easiest thing to do, especially when someone's triggered, if they go back to their old environment after inpatient treatment, they go straight back to their old environment, or even to an environment that doesn't provide enough support and accountability and community. It's like they're setting themselves up for failure. More than 90% of people fail, meaning they relapse within a year after leaving treatment. The reason being, most people relapse. And the reason most people relapse is because they have to learn how to live. And setting someone up for success means they go to a good, high quality, sober living like Camelback Recovery. Our program is based upon our 5 pillars: accountability, support structure, community, and purpose. So they're in our sober living. They're also going to outpatient treatment. And while in outpatient treatment, they're getting the clinical work done, the trauma work, the EMDR, the all of the other stuff. And then they live in a supportive environment, and we drug test a couple times a week. We breathalyze randomly. We provide gym memberships. We provide all the food. The food's good, high quality, organic whenever we can. Food and nutrition is such an important part of recovery. Most people, before they get clean and sober, they're eating a bunch of crap and a bunch of junk food. There's curfew. We require 5 units of self-care per week. So it's just a whole, people have to learn how to live life differently. Now, so Camelback Recovery, we recently opened up an outpatient treatment center, which I told you about. And so someone can come into our program, into our PHP program or IOP. So they can start at PHP, which is essentially inpatient treatment. They live in one of our sober living homes. They're attending PHP, a partial hospitalization, which is like inpatient treatment. And then they can step down to IOP while living in one of our sober living homes. And then they can step down to sober living, where they're just living in the sober living home. They have a purpose. They have a job. they're working, they're going to school, they're volunteering, they're doing something productive with their time. So that's necessary. But the thing about us having all of the different levels of continuum, or all the different levels of care, is that if someone's in our IOP or if they're in our sober living and they relapse, we can send them back to PHP. Now, before we were providing clinical services, if someone relapsed, we would refer them out to another treatment center. And
may have a different
50%
structure, it may have different values, it may have different things. It's not related to sober living.
No, so that's the problem is that these people are very sick. So we're trying to send them to a higher level of care, and they end up not even going to the treatment center. They end up relapsing and going out on a bender for the next week, month, 6 months, year, and then they overdose and they die. And when I say they overdose and they die, I'm not even exaggerating. Like I've seen that happen so many times. I can't even tell you how sad it is to see people come into our home and then they start getting a little sideways, and then they think that this recovery thing, I don't need this, I'm good, or let me just go out for a little bit and let me test the waters again. And they overdose and they die. I mean, like it's not even an exaggeration. Anybody that has any experience with treatment will tell you the same thing. People overdose and die all the time. And it's so sad. And especially what happens when people, they get a little bit of time under their belt. So they're clean and sober for a little while. They're in our sober living, or they're in someone else's sober living, or they go back home. And then they decide to go back out, and they think that their tolerance is as high as it was when they first got clean and sober. Boom, they're done. They're done. Next thing you know, they overdose and they're dead. I mean, it happens all the time.
There was how long are people typically, I don't know if there is a typical, but staying at Camelback recovery?
So the sober living is typically
So
sober living is typically 3 to 6 months. And I would say really like a year in recovery, a year focused is a solid start. Going to treatment for 30 to 45 to 30 to 60 days and then going back to just living life on their own, it's not enough time. Like it's not enough time. And so if someone is under some sort of care and supervision and has accountability, it's like doctors, dentists, and airline pilots. If they get in trouble for drug or alcohol related things, they're monitored for 5 years if they want to keep their license. The success rate of that population recovering from drug and alcohol use is 85%. So that just goes to show it's the longer someone is under care, monitored, held accountable, the higher the likelihood it is that they're going to stay sober for the rest of their life. And I think the statistics, these are the statistics that I heard. I don't know where these statistics come from, but only 90% of people are going to relapse within the first year. If someone makes it to a year, they have a 67% chance of making it to 5 years. If they make it to 5 years, they have an 85% chance of making it for life. So the longer someone stays clean and sober, the higher their chances are, because we're programmed to live life a certain way. 95% of our thoughts are subconscious, as I said earlier. 95% of my thoughts today are the same thoughts that I had yesterday. So I'm constantly thinking the same thing over and over and over again. For someone to change the way that they think, to change the way that they respond, to change the way that they live life, it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time.
So let's say, Jim, someone comes in they come to Camelback recovery. They're there for 6 months. Now, I know you have facilities in Arizona. Do people come from all over the place, or is it mostly local?
They come from all over the place. They come from all over the place. I mean, we have a lot of people that come from Arizona, and I would say our sober living is known around the country. I mean, we're known around the country. I mean, we have people from around the world that come and stay with us. A lot of people are from Arizona, but we have a lot. I mean, because doing a geographic is a good thing for a lot of people. I mean, temporarily, anyways. So if someone wants to start a new life, moving away from where they live, because all the triggers, all the toxic relationships, the way that they've been living their life for the last 5 or 10 or 20 years, like all those people are where they live typically. So moving to a new location is good in the short term. And the reason why I say short term is because someone needs to do the work and learn how to live life differently, learn how to develop healthy relationships, learn how to, just make different decisions. So if a person does the work and they start attracting different people into their life, then it's good. So does that make sense? So it's easier to do a geographic in the short run, but if they want it to stick, they really have to learn how to live life differently. And eventually they can, and I would say if someone can leave for at least 3 to 6 months, or maybe even a year, if they can leave where they're from for at least 3 to 6 months, that's like that would be better. Going to treatment where you live is, sometimes it can be harder. It's not impossible, but it's good if someone can leave.
Yeah. Let's talk about 2 scenarios. Let's talk about a great scenario outcome and a not great scenario outcome. Let's start with the good one. So 6 months, someone's doing great in the sober living facility. They're in Camelback recovery. What happens next once they leave?
Okay, so I actually have a specific story I can tell you about. Okay, so we had a client, his name, I'll just use his first name. His name's Patrick. So Patrick went to inpatient treatment for 45 days. And so Patrick, he was an alcoholic, and I think he was also doing opiates, actually. His wife left him and took his kids and said, "I'm done. You got to go to rehab." And he lost his job too. And this is like a professional with a good job. And so he educated, makes good money, professional. So he goes to inpatient treatment for 45 days. After inpatient treatment, he comes to Camelback recovery, lives in our sober living, does outpatient treatment, intensive outpatient treatment, IOP, for 8 weeks. And then after that, what he did was he stayed on and he was a house manager for Camelback recovery. So that's kind of like the next step. It's like, that's an entry level job. And this is a professional, like he's not a house man, you know what I mean? But it was his recovery job. Having a recovery job for someone that's trying to get back on their feet is the best thing. Going out there, because he could have gone straight back out to getting a great job and making great money, and because that's what he was used to. And I've seen that happen before too, where someone goes out and tries to hit a home run and get the best job ever because I got to take care of my kids, I got to take care of my wife, I need to get back to work, and it's just and then it ends in relapse and they're dead. And I've seen that happen too. So this guy, he's a house manager. He's with us for 6 months as a house manager. And then he starts interviewing for jobs, and he gets 3 job offers at great companies. I think one was Intel. I think he got 2 offers from Intel, one from SRP, and one from somewhere else. And he ended up taking a job for Intel. And today it's been a couple years, and he's doing great. He has great relationship with his wife. I think they did end up getting separated. They did end up getting divorced, but he has a great relationship with his ex-wife. He gets to take care of his kids. They co-parent. He bought a new house. He's like, his life is moving forward. He's back on track. And that's a beautiful thing.
Let's take the flip side. There was a child that came through.
Yeah. So this was a kid that came through. Again, he goes to inpatient treatment. He does outpatient treatment, lives in the sober living. but he's not really like he's a little bit younger, and he's really not ready to throw in the towel, I guess. I don't know. He's really not ready to give up the drinking and the drugs. And I would guess more than anything, he still thinks that he should be running the show. He doesn't want to follow rules. He doesn't want to do what he's told. He never relapsed while he was in our sober living, but you could see his behavior start to kind of go south. He ended up leaving a little bit early. And so this is a kid from Scottsdale. Parents made great money. They did really well. So financially, they owned businesses. So they were, it was a good, solid family on the outside anyways. And this kid he should have stuck with sober living. And he convinced his parents that he was ready to leave. His parents let him leave. And his parents, they're the ones that are footing the bill. So they paid for him to live somewhere else besides living at Camelback Recovery. And within a few months, he overdosed and he died. And it's so sad. His parents, they think they're doing the right thing. I mean, parents, like, they'll do anything for their kids. And a lot of times it's just, it takes a long time. I can't, there's so many other stories that I can think of. There was another guy that was with us. He owned a restaurant, and he owned a restaurant in South Scottsdale. So restaurateur, successful. He's been in business for a long, long time. He was living at our sober living for a while, for a few months. And then he ended up leaving, and he was a workaholic. He was a workaholic, and he worked in the restaurant industry, and he drank himself to death. I mean, it didn't happen right away, but that's kind of what happens. This disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. It takes lives. And so the longer someone stays in treatment, the longer someone stays connected, the higher the likelihood is that they're actually going to get better. And it's all about focusing on living a better life. That's been my experience.
Tim, I have one last question, but before I ask it, first of all, thank you for sharing the stories and your journey. To say it was rocky is an understatement. So I really am, thankful that you got out of it, and you keep doing the work, and that, what happened to you wasn't a death sentence for you, because, really appreciate that, and you sharing your story.
Yeah. And I would definitely be dead. There's no way that I would be alive. There's no way. I was crazy. I was a freaking disaster. I'm surprised that I lived as long as I lived. And I told you the story about the accident. I drank for 15 more years. So, just because an addict or an alcoholic has something that is so disastrous and catastrophic, and everybody else thinks, oh my God, he's definitely going to stop, or she's definitely going to stop after this. Like, I didn't stop.
Yeah.
I would say that the bottom that got me sober wasn't even my lowest bottom.
It shows the importance of a place like Camelback Recovery, because even that incident of being curled up and, being in a hospital for 2 weeks and that wasn't enough. And if that's not enough to stop someone, nothing is, until you put in outside, some support in there. So my last question, and I want to encourage everyone to go to camelbackrecovery.com to learn more, is just, someone's listening to this, they know someone who, or maybe suspect someone, a loved one, a friend who they either know or suspect is struggling. What should be the first thing that they do? How can they help?
The first thing I think they should do is get a hold of somebody that's either works in treatment or is in recovery or somehow connected. I mean, I get messages and phone calls from people that I know, that I knew from elementary school, from college, from high school. family members. Like I get calls from lots of people. So if you know somebody that's either clean and sober, they're in and they speak about it, especially like I'm very public about my recovery and my sobriety, I'll help anybody. And either I'll be able to help you or I'll be able to send you to the right place. And it doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter if you're in another part of the country, if you're in another part of the world, or if you're in Arizona, or if you're in California. It doesn't matter where you're at. Just reach out to me or reach out to somebody else that you know that's in recovery. And the other thing too is that the treatment industry is like they're not all good players. So finding someone that is ethical and provides good, high quality treatment is like, it's daunting to go out there and start making, if I'm somebody that is not familiar with treatment or recovery, and I start picking up the phone or I start Googling, like there's a bunch of people out there and you don't know who's providing good treatment. You don't know who's just after your insurance dollars. You don't know who's out there trying to scam you. So it's like, it's tricky. So I'd say look us up, Camelback Recovery. You can find me on Instagram, Kick-Ass Sober Life. I have a YouTube channel, Camelback Recovery, if you want to watch some of my videos and become educated and learn a little bit more. If you're looking for an interventionist, that's the other kind of part of the continuum, is if someone needs help, needs an intervention, then I can help you find an interventionist. You can call Camelback Recovery. Our phone number is 602-466-9880. If you need help, call us, send us a message, go to our website, and we'll either be able to help you or we'll be able to send you to the appropriate person or level of care that provides the service that you're looking for.
Yeah. Tim, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out camelbackrecovery.com. Check out more episodes of Inspired Insider and Rise 25. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks so much, Jeremy.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.